Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War Warhammer 2 Quick Match gameplay. This time around we are in Mosquito Swamps playing as Norsca against the Wood Elves. And I think this is one of those bad matchups for Norsca. Norsca doesn't have, I think, too many bad matchups in large part just because Fimir are so strong. But if there's a bad matchup for Norsca, it's definitely usually against kiting builds because Norsca doesn't have the greatest counters to them. So I have taken quite a few occasional, well, maybe not quite a few, but I've definitely taken some losses to Wood Elf kite builds. It's definitely somewhat difficult, even if you go wide, just because the Marauders are fairly squishy and fairly easy to, say, charge down. With your opponent might bring War Dancers, they might bring Wild Riders, units like that, and they'll just butcher Marauders. They'll just run them over and really kind of dispatch them with relative ease. Or they can just bring one or two anchor units and with like Treekin or Treemen, and you can't do very much to them, and those aren't even very good units. So I found that to be a bit of a rough situation, and you kind of struggle to catch units like Way Watchers. Units like Skinwolves are just slow. Units like Hounds, although fast, are just very susceptible to Wild Riders and the support tools the Wood Elves have. So what I said to do here was a bit of a mixed build. For my front line, a bunch of Marauders, one of which is the Icehorn Marauders, the Regiment of Renown, which does have Perfect Vigor, which I think is great. Perfect Vigor is an incredibly valuable ability. We also do have a single of Marauder Champions anchoring the line, backed up by a Fimir Balefiend of Shadows. Basically, these guys are my bunker buster. They are my sort of tough anchor unit that I'm going to be counting on to really carry the day here if my opponent goes very infantry heavy. They're a very good unit against Wood Elves. You just got to be wary of mass enemy shooting. Because unlike Chaos, who has Solar Shields and cheap-ish heavily armored infantry like Chaos Warriors, Marauder Champions are expensive and definitely very, very susceptible to arrow fire despite bronze shields. In many ways, despite Chaos, Norsca, just because of the way they're built, is just a bit weaker, I think, that sort of stuff than, say, Chaos, and it's definitely a bit of a problem. But regardless, we do have Fimir Balefiend of Shadows to back them. We've got Enfeebling Foe as well as Miasma. We've got Arcane Conduit, and otherwise, I actually brought his full kit of abilities because I wanted that extra speed and extra survivability from Evasion. I did bring Smoke and Mirrors as well as from the Mist because, honestly, 22% missile resist against Wood Elves could be absolutely invaluable. For our Lord, we do have Wulfric the Wanderer, who does have the Hunter of Champions, Seafang, and Foe Seeker. I didn't even bother with sort of Torgald here. I don't actually believe I had the money for it. So, looking basically to have a fairly survivable, fairly mobile Lord who can flex where needed. But if I need to hide from enemy shooting, we can definitely do that. Over on this flank, we've got Norscan Ice Wolves backed by two Skinwolves that are armored. Now, you might be wondering why armor instead of normal. Well, because if your opponent goes with Deepwood Scouts or Deepwood Scouts with Shivers, they will absolutely annihilate normal Skinwolves, who only have 20 armor and rely on physical resist. I much prefer the armor because it also gives you more of a fighting chance against Wild Riders. It gives you a better chance against all the non-AP that the High Elves do have, or the Wood Elves, sorry, do have. So I definitely think armor is the way to go, and it's not too much more expensive, and the speed loss isn't that critical. On this flank, Beasts of Tashnar and Norscan Ice Wolves, the Maws of Savagery, because I do think you want some AP in every situation, and then more Skinwolves with armor. Now, you might be wondering why Beasts of Tashnar, what's so special about them? Well, they're actually pretty crazy. They've got Frenzy, they've got bonus versus large of, I think, 14. You can see melee attack of 40, so they're up to 54 melee attack against large, pretty crazy. But most importantly, they've actually got 50% missile resist, which is ridiculous. The Norscan Ice Wolves, these puppies over here, they only got 15%, which is pretty terrible in comparison. So my opponent going with a kite build, or kind of a kite build, a bit of a hybrid build. Double Wild Riders as well as Sister of the Thorn, backing up quite a few Way Watchers here. 3 units of them to be exact, and they're immediately going to start chipping away at my incoming Marauders, my incoming Hounds, and my Skinwolves, and all that sort of stuff. And in the back, my opponent does have 3 units of Eternal Guard's Shields, the Wardens of Sithrall, as well as a Branch Wraith. And the Branch Wraith, if we quickly gloss over its abilities, it does have Call of the Woods, not a bad melee attack buff, always I think good to bring if you can afford it, Earthblood, Melkos Miasma, and Penumbral Pendulum. Of course, all very good for a line fight, very solid sort of buff and debuff lineup there, and definitely could be very useful. Finally, Glady up in the air with Prey of Anathrema, Banner of the Eternal Queen, and Eye of Kurnus. Eye of Kurnus I don't think is really worth it, and I say this all the time. I think it's a pretty terrible ability, but regardless, my opponent did bring it. Over here, we are going to catch these Way Watchers with our puppies, and you can see they're going to take these guys to Pound Town. Way Watchers, although not exactly pushovers in melee, definitely not wanting to be dealing with some very angry Frost Wolves, so they're getting wrecked. And over here, my opponent, despite his best efforts to use the Curse of Honor, I do apologize there, is going to have his Wild Riders caught out by the Skinwolves. We are rushing in with our Hounds. Prey of Anathrema is going down on, I do believe, the Maws of Savagery. all these debuffs, all these drops coming in, but we are going to be able to snag these Wild Riders. We're going to be able to prevent them from escaping. They're getting frostbitten, and suddenly life is going to look very, very grim. Anytime we read the Icehorn Marauders, Ark's going to start collapsing. The Marauders diving in, the Skin Wolves over here actually piling in, pushing through alongside their Ice Wolf brethren to push off these Way Watchers. You can see we've lost a huge chunk of their models, over half of them in fact. And suddenly we're able to sort of pivot around, and we're going to be able to start getting a bit of a surround. This isn't a big map, so my opponent doesn't have too much maneuver space. We need these Wild Riders within a human foe, which means they are going to get shredded. They've only got 40 armor and a little bit of physical resist. So especially against Skin Wolves, who are just optimized for killing light cav, these guys are in for a horrible time. You can see they're just jumping up and down. These puppies are just so happy to be slaughtering some elves, and we can basically just chain this off into a second slaughter. Now my opponent is chipping away at me here with the Way Watchers. I basically ignored the Way Watchers except for that one unit I caught out early. But I figured at this point I can kind of afford it. My opponent doesn't have a great shot. He could try to snipe Wolfric. But unfortunately he doesn't really have options elsewhere. Wild Riders being pursued off the field. You can see the Way Watchers now going to get run down. And they're not going to be able to make a comeback. They're just completely screwed. They're going to chase down. You can see they're getting bitten by those dogs in the back, and they're just getting dragged into the muck. And over here in the meantime, the front line's starting to buckle. You can see we hit the Eternal Guard with shields within enfeebling foe. I'm making sure to... I brought a lot of cheap spells. And I'm making sure to cast them constantly, just to be reaching my opponent's line wherever needed, just forcing those breaks, despite the Earthbloods, despite the buffs, just making sure my opponent isn't able to hold his own. Using that debuff as well from the, of course, the one of the cool things about the Ephemeral Balefiend is that it does apply, of course, armor sundering to this Ephemeral unit, which although it might not seem like much, against Eternal Guard, if you're able to armor sunder it, you know, 40 versus 10 armor is a huge difference. It does make a huge difference as far as your non-AP units go and doing damage. Wolfric is going to be able to push through the line here. We're going to be able to plow through. Now, certainly, Melkos Miasma is going down. You can see Branch Wraith trying to bog me down here. We actually hit it with a Hunter of Champions. I'm trying to get Wolfric on him. Way Watchers will break these Skin Wolves. But the thing is, there are still 2 units of very happy, very hungry, very angry Skin Wolves over there. And the Mouths of Savagery, despite having lost a model, are still very, very healthy. And these Way Watchers are just no longer fast enough, no longer well protected enough to get away. My opponent's remaining troops are essentially just a handful of Wild Riders. Well, they just got chased off, so he's out of his cavalry. He's out of luck there. These Eternal Guard here getting bogged down and slaughtered. The Wardens of Sith are all getting dragged down. We're going to hit him with an enfeebling foe once again, just hitting those abilities constantly to drag these guys into the muck. And now the final collapse is upon us. You can see the Branch Wraith here getting caught out. We are going to hit the Branch Wraith with Wolfric the Wanderer. He's going to start beating him down. Over here, it's essentially over. The Way Watchers are going to get caught by the puppies. The werewolves over here, the Werkin or the Skin Wolves, are just going to run amok. You can see they're only tired or winded, so they're actually in pretty good shape. And once these Way Watchers are off the field, my opponent really just doesn't have the tools anymore. He's essentially just down to the Sister Thorn. And that's going to be a game. And you can see, in fact, even these Skin Wolves over here actually rallied, and they've still got 10 models and quite a lot of weight to their healing cap, so that's nowhere near game over for them. And that is going to be GG in the favor of the Force of Norsca. So over here you can see just the last few sort of kills being scored there on those filthy little elves by the Skin Wolves. So I know some people say go wide, and I think go wide is definitely viable in this situation as well. It's what I generally do with Chaos, to be quite honest. I think that due to the lack of heavy cav and the fact that their lords aren't quite as tanky, you can't bring Caesar Throil to just soak up missiles for days. I think Norsca's kind of... This is not a bad build, I don't think, for Norsca. You've got a lot of snaring potential with Norsca Wolves, which have their Frostbite effect. You've got some decent soaking power with the Beast of Tashnar, as well as just having raw quantity with Skin Wolves. And if your opponent goes with a lot of, say, Eternal Guard, your Marauders will trade rather well. The Marauder Champions will do a great job. The Fimir is a good boost as well with Melkos Miasma. And of course, Wolfric is not bad either. He's got Sea Fang, which can act as a further slow. And he's got Sea Fang, of course, just to wipe out those lines of elves if your opponent goes more campy. Certainly the kill counts here aren't anything impressive, but honestly, there's no way they could be. My opponent's army just kind of broke, and the Skin Wolves weren't really doing the pursuing. It was mostly the Hounds just farming kills, and the Beast of Tashnar got 78 kills. So I definitely think this is viable, and I definitely think it's the way to go. I do think that armored Skin Wolves are the better way to go than, say, getting an extra unit of Marauders or more Chevrons or something like that, because the simple fact is that extra armor can help a lot. If you're dealing with War Dancers, if you need to fight Wild Riders, if you need to fight Sisters of Thorn, and basically anything in melee that's not Eternal Guard or War Dancers with Azure Spears, that armor is going to make a difference. As far as my opponent, little shade here. I don't think this is necessarily the best way to go if you're trying to go kitey. I think you're better off bringing some War Dancers. Perhaps the Regiment of Renowned Way Watchers, just for the demoralizing effect. And then, I don't know. I think this could be decent. It's just very difficult to stop this much stuff being thrown at you, and you need to focus down units one at a time. That was another big mistake I think for my opponent, was that he just didn't focus the skin wolves that well. He didn't have enough troops to cover all angles. He blobbed his Wild Riders up and essentially got them caught in a 2v2 against skin wolves, which is terrible. Whereas if they'd been separated, if they, at least some of them had been able to get in against the isolated hounds, or if he'd able to get a fight with infantry alongside his Wild Riders, things could have gone much better. We basically got an isolated fight, and that was just brutal. So I think there was a little bit of a micro mistake, but I definitely think War Dancers are generally a better pick here, especially with Azrai Spear. They can be a bit of a nuisance. The Wild Riders can still break up these infantry mobs, and your Way Watchers can give you that killing power against the big stuff. Also, get a net sooner. Net something, melt it with Way Watcher fire, and then go for something else, and just keep rinse and repeat, essentially. That's the way to go with Way Watchers. You've got 190 range and a lot of damage. Use it. Regardless, good game to my opponent here. I do hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe below to keep up with additional content. If you have any comments, any questions, any concerns, anything of that nature, be sure to post them, and I will do my best to respond as soon as I am able. As usual, I do appreciate you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Wyvern out.